Hello and welcome to another tutorial video. Today I will be showing you how to install the Quantum Particles version 2. At first I will go over how to do it with VRCFury, then the manual setup with something like a V3 Manager, and then lastly I will also show you how to create custom prefabs with different selections for the presets and some other settings. There will be timestamps for everything in the description. There will also be links to the packages you need and also to the Discord server and documentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to check down there or join the Discord and ask. If you have any feedback, suggestions or bug reports or anything, feel free to let me know there. So let's get into it. This time we have 3 different prefabs to choose from, either full, basic or classic. The full one contains all the presets in the current version. Basic only contains a few more simpler ones that are also a bit easier on performance ranking, and Classic only contains the default one, which is the original one from the old GPU particles. For these examples here in the tutorials, I will only be using the full one, and then later at the end I will go into a bit more detail on how to maybe even create your custom one if you so desire. Alright, let's start with VRCFury. All you have to do here is drag the VRCFury prefab into your scene and then onto your avatar. And that's pretty much it. If this is all you want, you're already done. But as I will show you in a moment, you might want to slightly adjust the positions of the attractors. So if I turn this on now with Gesture Manager, you will be able to see they spawn right around neck height, a bit in front of my face. I will show you in a moment how you can adjust that position, but for completeness, I switch over to VR mode and you will see that they get attracted to my hands, or to be more specific, to my index finger. This is also something that you can adjust. So let's get on to that. One thing that you can do is open up your hierarchy and navigate to your neck. From the neck you copy the world transform and then paste that onto the neck proxy. Paste world transform. Now you should be able to see it up here on your neck, and then you can go to the desktop anchor and adjust the position of this one to where you want it to be. So for me, for example, I want it a bit further away and about eye height, like this. If this is all you want to do, you would already be done and you can go back to play mode again and test it. But I'm also going to adjust the position of the right hand anchor a little bit. First of all, I want to change the bone that it's attached to. For that I have to completely unpack the prefab. There we go. And then after I've done that, I go to the right hand anchor and change the link to avatar selection here from the right index distal to, let's say, the right hand. Now this would put it around where the wrist is, because that's where the base of the right hand bone is. So instead I go into the advanced options and then I turn off the align position checkbox, and now I can put it wherever I want and it will stay in that position relative to the hand bone. So I can go over here, adjust the position a bit. Let's see, that should be fine from the distance wise, maybe a little bit like this and a little bit up. The other thing to take into note here is that you might want to adjust the rotation as well, depending on the presets you want to use. Most of them it doesn't matter, but for the fire, for example, it does make a difference where the up direction or forward direction is for some of the effects. So keep in mind, the green arrow is pointing up and the blue arrow is pointing forward. So in our case, I want to have it pointing downwards, so away from the arm. And then I want the green arrow to point away from our body, the blue arrow to point away from our body. So I'm going to rotate this by 50 degrees in that way, and now it should be properly aligned. Yep. So now the forward direction is away from our body and the up direction is away from our palm of the hand. Now if we go back to play mode again, and we can go over to the gesture manager turn on the particles, and you can already see the position for desktop mode has been adjusted. So now it's a bit higher up and in front of us. And if I go over to VR mode and then switch to our fire preset, then you can already see for the left hand it is still in the index finger, but for the right hand it is now in the palm of our hand. And if we switch over to something like the gun, then we can see now the fire is shooting away from the palm of our hand. And if we go over to the rock and roll, then the ring is also pointing this way. So this is what the directions are useful for. So keep that in mind when you adjust the position, to maybe also adjust the rotation as well with it. For the manual setup, we just take the non-VRCFury one and drag it into our scene. Then right click, go to Prefab, unpack, yes. Then we open it up and drag the quantum particles object onto our avatar. And for the other one, we open it up and put all of these 4 into their respective bones. So let's start with the neck and head. We put this one in the neck, this one in the head. Make sure to reset the transforms. There we go. Don't worry if the rotation here is slightly off, that's just because of the rotation constraint. And lastly, open up the neck proxy and adjust the position of the desktop anchor a bit. I personally always put it a bit higher up to eye level and a bit farther away as well, but you can put it wherever you prefer it to. Now we move on to the left and right hand. I'm gonna be putting the left one into my index finger. There we go. Make sure to reset it as well. And the right one I'm going to be putting in my hand. There we go. Resetting it as well. And for this one I'm also going to adjust the position and rotation a bit, because some of the presets, they are reliant on the direction or the rotation of the attraction point. So it is important to keep in mind that the green arrow here is up. So if we want to point that away from the palm, for example, we should rotate it like this. Now up is pointing away from the palm, and blue is forward, is pointing that direction. That's just how I wanted it, so I'm going to keep it that way. And now, after we've done everything on the armature, we can just delete the prefab and move on to the next part. Next, we need to merge the animators, the parameters, and also add the menu. So for this, we have to go over to the resources, then depending on the prefab you used, I have the full one, and then into the expressions folder. Then we go to AV3 Manager, we use our avatar here, go to the FX layer, and then click on Add Animator to merge. Now it is important to know what kind of parameters and animations you might already have. In my case, I already have the gesture left and gesture right. So if I drag the first one in, it's going to give me these 2 arrows. If you don't get those arrows, then go with the first one, because it is slightly more optimized. But if you get those arrows, just reload AV3 Manager, go back to Add Animator to merge, and choose the second one. That one should be good to go. And we can scroll all the way down and merge on current or merge on new, depending on what you prefer. Then I'm gonna go over to the parameters and just drag in these ones, copy parameters, and we're good to go. Now the last thing left is to add it to our menu. So I'm gonna go to the menu that we have here, add a new entry, make it a submenu. I'm going to name it particles. If you look for a particle texture, you should also find it here. And then for the menu, we go back to our expressions and then drag in the menu that's just called quantum particles. There you go. And that should be it for the setup. Now when we test it, we can go to Gesture Manager, we can turn them on. You see the position of the attractor is right here where we put it. We can also switch over to VR mode, and they should slowly be getting attracted to our attractors here on the hands instead. And if we switch over to something like fire, for example, then we can also see we have one of them in our left index finger and the other one in our right palm. But if we, for example, do something like the gun gesture, then you see how the fire is pointing away from our palm. That's why we adjusted the rotation. And if we go to the rock and roll, and you can see that the ring or the magic circle is now aligned with our hand like this. So that's why it's important to adjust the rotation depending on where you move them to. Now that you've seen the setup tutorials, I would love to show you how to create your own custom prefab. For this, you go into the tools, and then under Quantum Particles, you open the Prefab Creator. This will be its own window. I'm just going to drag it over here to the right, and you should be able to see all of this. At the top, you have some path settings. By default, they should all be fine. They're only relevant if you move around the folders in your project. And next, you have this list of all of the presets. What you can do here is you can turn specific ones on and off. You can also change the order. So for example, I'm going to put the string one at the top. And then maybe you also move the sun higher up. There we go. And you can turn some in between also off, then they will be just ignored. So in this case, I have these 4 presets. I can also change the texture resolution, which affects the particle count. So you can see you cannot directly change the particle count, but you can lower or higher the texture resolution, and that will change the particle count in steps of or multipliers of 4. You can also freely change the resolution, but it is less optimized and might not be fully supported. It is technically possible, but just use it with care. Now, after we adjusted the texture resolution and the particle count, we can also adjust the bounce size. This is mainly important depending on what kind of situation you want to use the particles in. If you're just using them on a small scale, maybe you want to show them to some friends close by, or are sure that the person who will look at the particles will look at you, you can leave that pretty low. But if you want to show it to a larger amount of people that might be farther away, you might have to increase this value so they can see the particles even if they don't directly look at you. I will show you an example of this in a moment. And then lastly, you can change the name. I'm just going to leave it at custom. So now that I've selected all of these and adjusted the settings, I can click on Create Prefab. This is going to take a little bit. Don't worry, depending on the amount of presets you selected, it might take up to a minute or 2. But it's going to generate all of the assets, the animations, materials, the prefab. It even creates a VRCFury prefab that you can just drag into your avatar and you're ready to go. And just give it a second, we'll be back in a moment. Alright, this took about 40-45 seconds. So let's get onto the prefab. If you go to the prefabs folder, we now have these 2 QP Custom and QP Custom VRCFury. I can just drag that one in and put it on my avatar now. And if I go into play mode, we should have our custom prefab. So if I go to the gesture manager, we can see by default it goes to the strings because that was the first one. And if I go to the presets, we see the exact selection of presets that we wanted in the exact order. And with the bounce, we can now also see if I go to the stars, for example, and I look away or like slightly off from my avatar, if I'm too far away, then the particles are just going to disappear. So right here at this point. This is the bounds that I'm crossing right now. So if someone were standing too far away from me and are looking away from me, they won't see the particles anymore. But if someone's closer by, then they can freely look around and it's not an issue. So just choose that value depending on what kind of people you want to show to or what kind of setting you want to use the particles in. And keep in mind that it is also relevant for performance. In this example here, I also increased the particle count. So you can see here the sun, for example, is a lot more dense than in the normal one. But if you want to have a much easier setup with a lot less particles, so it has a better performance ranking, then you can also lower this value and you can just customize it to your liking. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any more questions or feedback, or if you encounter any issues, the video description has a link to the Discord server, so feel free to join and let me know. That being said, it's been quite a while since the last public release, so thank you very much for the patience. I know originally I only intended to add audio link, but then I also wanted to add a lot more complexity to the effects with the partitioning system and make the whole setup with the presets easier and end up making that script and so on. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm very thankful to all my Patreons who have been along with this journey with me. If you want to have early access to these things that I'm working on, or just want to have your name fancily written in these particle effects at the end of my videos, then consider becoming a Patreon yourself. I would really appreciate it. In the near future, I want to try spreading out a bit more. There's a few more videos that I want to make at first for the particle system itself, because there's so much more to it than most people probably even know about. All the different settings that you can change and adjust, etc. So I want to go a bit more into detail about those things so people can really utilize the whole system to its fullest. But besides that, I also want to try making more unique systems and setups that aren't part of the presets, for example, but more tailored to specific use cases and specific assets. But I also want to try making completely different assets that don't have much to do with particles. Like, for example, you might see on my avatar, I've been playing around with some things already, and I'm a huge fan of space and magic, so I've been making things like this, for example, which is like a space crystal wand that can split apart and disintegrate. So if you like these kind of things, then make sure to stay tuned. And I will also be trying to work a bit on worlds. That's one thing that I've been trying to do for a really long time already. So hopefully I'll finally manage to make something work. And lastly, I'm also available for commissions. So if you want to have some special unique effects for your avatar, please let me know, and I'm sure we'll figure something out. Then thank you very much for watching again. If you want to have a bit more of a showcase of all the different presets, because you know today I only went into how to actually install them on your avatar, I made a video a while ago where I give a showcase of all the presets that are in this version, so make sure to check it out, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!